My husband told his mother in Korean that he had gotten my best friend pregnant. They had no idea I spoke the language fluently. I grew up in Koreatown, Los Angeles. My neighbors were Korean. My babysitter was Korean. By the time I was 12, I spoke it better than some native speakers. But when I married Mason 3 years ago, I never mentioned it. There wasn't some secret reason. It just never came up. And after a while, it felt unnecessary to say anything at all. During our first dinner with his parents, his mother made a comment in Korean about my very American cooking. I smiled and passed the rice. She seemed satisfied. Mason worked in tech, good money, long hours, always busy. My best friend Lauren started coming over more often when he had those late nights at the office. She'd bring wine. We'd watch movies, sit on the couch and talk about normal things. We had known each other since high school. She had stood next to me on my wedding day. I never questioned it. Thanksgiving was when everything changed. His parents flew in from Chicago. The house felt full and loud. I was at the sink washing dishes when I heard his mother lower her voice and ask in Korean, "When are you going to tell her?" I kept rinsing the plates. Mason answered, "After the holidays. Lauren is 12 weeks. For a second, I thought I had misunderstood, that maybe the water running in the sink had distorted the words. Then his mother said, "This is a disaster. She seems like a good girl." And Mason replied, "She is. That's why I have to do this carefully. I don't want her walking away with everything." The glass slipped from my hand and shattered against the side of the sink. I blamed the soap. My hands were shaking. My face wasn't. I finished the dishes. I dried my hands. I brought out dessert like nothing had happened. That night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and created a new email address. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I started preparing. For the next 6 weeks, I became the best version of the wife he thought he had. I cooked Mason's favorite meals. I asked about his projects. I listened when he talked about work, nodding at the right moments. I kissed him goodbye every morning like I always did. I invited Lauren to brunch. I helped her scroll through maternity clothes. I threw her a small baby shower in my living room with soft blue decorations and a 3-tier cake she had specifically asked for in a voice message. "You're honestly the best friend I have," she had said in that message. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I saved that recording, not because I planned to use it, but because sometimes I needed to hear it again to remember exactly who she had been sitting across from all those weeks. Every text between them went into a folder. Every receipt I found. Every time he claimed he was working late while his car was parked outside her building. I hired a private investigator. Her name was Nicole. She was calm, efficient, and didn't ask questions that didn't need answers. 2 weeks later, she met me at a coffee shop downtown and handed me a thick envelope. I opened it right there at the table. Photos with timestamps, hotel bookings going back 8 months, his car outside Lauren's apartment at 11:18 p.m. on a Tuesday, him leaving at 7:03 a.m. the next morning, wearing the same jacket. I paid Nicole in cash. Before I stood up, she asked softly, "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said, and I meant it. The first 2 days after Thanksgiving had drained everything out of me. I had cried quietly in the shower. I had stared at the ceiling at 3 in the morning while he slept next to me, breathing deeply like nothing in his life was out of place. But after that, something shifted. I didn't feel stronger. I felt clear. At night, I lay beside him and counted his breathing. 1, 2, 3. He slept peacefully, completely unaware. He didn't know that while he slept, I was organizing everything by date, that I had already spoken to an attorney and saved her number under a fake name in my phone, that I had opened a bank account 12 blocks away from our apartment in a branch he would never walk into because it wasn't on his usual route. I planned everything while making his breakfast, while ironing his shirts, while tying ribbons on gift bags for Lauren's baby shower. Lauren started getting careless. One afternoon, she sat on my couch rubbing her stomach and told me the father wanted to be involved but needed to handle his situation first. "That sounds responsible," I said. "He seems like a good man." She glanced at our wedding photo on the mantel. "He really is," she said quietly. I smiled and poured her more tea. The week before Christmas, I decided it was time. I invited everyone to dinner at an Italian restaurant downtown. My parents, his parents, Lauren, Mason. I gave each of them a different reason to come. To my parents, I said I wanted to celebrate the holidays early. To his parents, I sent a message saying I had a surprise planned for their son. To Lauren, I texted, "I really need you tonight, please come." To Mason, I said I had booked the restaurant to celebrate our anniversary a few weeks early. No one asked questions. I arrived at 6:15. The reservation was at 7 nay. I needed the extra time. I spoke with the host and adjusted the seating slightly so my chair faced the entrance and the hallway leading to the restrooms. I preferred seeing who walked in. The restaurant was called Bellucci's. Mason had brought me there on our first anniversary. I remembered him asking me to close my eyes before he handed me a necklace across the table. I had believed I married a thoughtful, steady man. Now I sat in the same place with legal documents inside my purse. Nicole had texted me at 5. "Everything's organized. Call if you need anything." I replied with a simple thank you and put my phone away. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't shaking. I had already lived through the worst part, the moment at the sink. My parents arrived first at 6:50. My mother walked in wearing the beige coat I gave her last year. My father followed behind her, holding an umbrella even though it wasn't raining. "What are we celebrating?" my mom asked as she sat down. "Just being together," I said. 7 minutes later, Mason's parents walked in. Mrs. Hahn scanned the room before smiling. Mr. Hahn stayed close beside her. When I poured water into her glass, she looked directly at me. I held her gaze. She looked away first. Lauren arrived at 7:05. She wore a dark green dress that made her pregnancy obvious now. The gold earrings I had given her for her birthday caught the light when she hugged me. "How are you?" she whispered. "Good," I said. "Sit next to me." Mrs. Hand's expression tightened for a fraction of a second. Lauren didn't notice. Mason walked in last at 7:12, adjusting his jacket like he always did when he was late. He spotted me across the room and smiled. That smile used to calm me. He greeted everyone and sat to my left. "Traffic was awful," he said. He placed his hand over mine on the table. I let it stay there. The waiter came to take our orders. Small talk filled the table while we waited for the food. December weather. Christmas plans. My dad telling a story about a neighbor's tree falling into the sidewalk. Everyone laughed. Mason looked relaxed, leaning back in his chair, talking about an update his team had launched that week. He had no idea. For 3 weeks, he hadn't suspected anything, because I had given him no reason to. Lauren touched my arm. "You're quiet tonight," she said. "Is everything okay?" "I'm just thinking about how to start," I replied. "Start what?" "There's something I want to share with everyone," I said, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Let's wait until the food comes." My mother looked curious. Mason raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Hahn stopped mid-sentence. The plates arrived. The waiter left. I picked up my wine glass. "I'd like to make a toast," I said. Everyone lifted their glasses. Lauren lifted her sparkling water. "To the things you learn when you stop pretending you don't know them." There was a pause. My mother said, "Cheers," lightly. My father echoed it. The others followed. Mason drank without breaking eye contact. Lauren didn't. I set my glass down. Then I opened my purse and pulled out 6 identical envelopes. One by one, I placed them in front of each person at the table. First my parents, then his, then one in front of Mason, and the last in front of Lauren. "They won't understand yet," I said calmly. "Let me explain first." I looked around the table. The restaurant noise faded into the background. Plates clinking, low music, other conversations. None of it felt real anymore. "I grew up in Koreatown," I began. "My babysitter was Korean. I learned the language when I was a kid. By 12, I was fluent." Mrs. Hahn's fingers tightened slightly around her napkin. "When I married Mason, I never mentioned it. It didn't feel important." I paused. On Thanksgiving, while I was washing dishes in the kitchen, I heard a conversation in Korean. I looked directly at Mrs. Han. "You asked him when he was going to tell me. He said after the holidays. He said Lauren was 12 weeks pregnant. No one moved." The air at the table shifted. "You also said I seemed like a good girl," I continued. "And he said that's why he needed to handle it carefully, that he didn't want me walking away with everything." My father slowly set his fork down. My mother's eyes filled, but she didn't speak. Mason's hand was still resting on the table. He hadn't touched the envelope in front of him. Lauren's face drained of color. "I've spent the last 6 weeks documenting everything," I said. "What you're holding are copies, photos, hotel records, messages, dates." I looked at Mason. "And the legal paperwork I already filed." He finally spoke. "Olivia, wait," I said, my voice steady. "Let them read." My father opened his envelope first. He handled the papers carefully, the way he always did with anything serious. I watched the moment his expression changed. He didn't say anything. He just looked at Mason. My mother took longer. She read every page. When she reached the photos, she closed the envelope slowly. Mr. Hahn opened his next. He read the first page and passed it to his wife without speaking. Mrs. Hahn read silently, her jaw tightening. Lauren opened hers last. She pulled the pages out one at a time. Screenshots of messages, hotel confirmations from 3 different places, a photo of Mason entering her building at 11:18 p.m., another of him leaving the next morning. She put the papers back down. "Olivia," she started. "Not yet," I said. She stopped. Mason still hadn't opened his envelope. "Go ahead," I told him quietly. He looked at me for a long second, then opened it. He didn't flip through all of it. He didn't need to. Silence settled fully at the table. "I filed 3 weeks ago," I said. "You were served through your attorney yesterday. The process already started." My mother turned to Mason. "Is it true?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. That hesitation was louder than anything else. "Is it true?" his father repeated, this time firmer. "Yes," Mason said finally. One word. He stared at the table when he said it. My father pushed his plate away slightly, like the food no longer belonged there. Mrs. Hahn spoke then, in careful English. "I did not think it would happen like this." "You knew," I said. She didn't deny it. Lauren's voice trembled when she spoke. "I didn't know you understood Korean." "That wasn't the question," I replied. She swallowed. "When were you going to tell me the father of your baby was my husband?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know," she whispered. "That's the problem," I said. Mason tried again. "This shouldn't be happening here. We can talk about this privately." "It already happened privately," I answered. "For 8 months." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair, a gesture I had seen 100 times when he was cornered. My father looked at me instead of at him. "What do you need from us tonight?" he asked. It was the right question. "I need everyone to know the truth," I said. "I don't want a different version of this story circulating later." He nodded once. I reached into my purse again and pulled out one final folded document. I placed it in front of Mason. "You have until Friday to respond through your attorney." His eyes narrowed slightly. "So you decided everything already?" "Yes," I said. 3 weeks ago. Without talking to me?" "You had 8 months to talk to me." He didn't answer. Mr. Hahn made a quiet sound under his breath, not quite a sigh, not quite agreement. I stood up. "The dinner is paid for," I said calmly. "I took care of it earlier." My mother stood immediately. My father followed. We walked toward the exit without rushing. Just before I reached the door, Mason's voice came from behind me. "That's it? You're just leaving?" I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm leaving," I said. "The difference is I'm doing it on my terms." I stepped outside. The December air was cold against my face. My mother took my arm. My father walked on my other side. We didn't speak for almost half a block. Then my mother asked quietly, "Where are you staying?" "With you," I said. "If that's okay." "Your room is exactly how you left it," she replied. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, my hands weren't shaking anymore. I stayed at my parents' house for 4 days. My childhood bedroom smelled the same. Clean laundry and old wood. The bed was smaller than the one I had shared with Mason for 3 years, but I slept better than I had in months. No counting breaths. No staring at the ceiling. The first day, I barely spoke. My mother didn't push. She brought me coffee. Asked if I wanted breakfast. When I said yes, she cooked without filling the silence with questions. My father came home at 6. We had dinner like it was any other weeknight. They talked about a series he had started watching. A neighbor repainting their house an unfortunate shade of blue. Ordinary things. No one said Mason's name. On the second day, Mason called. I let it ring. A text followed. "We need to talk." I sent back one message, the phone number of my attorney, Rebecca Morales. Nothing else. 10 minutes later, another text. "Is this really how you want to handle it?" I didn't answer. Later that afternoon, Lauren called. I didn't pick up. She left a message. "I know you don't owe me anything, but I need to explain." I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. It wasn't that I had nothing to say. It was that I had already said everything that mattered at the restaurant. Any further conversation would only serve them. They needed to explain. I didn't need to listen. On Thursday, I met with Rebecca in her office. She was in her early 50s, sharp eyes, short dark hair, no wasted movements. A friend from college had recommended her 2 years earlier, just in case I ever needed someone who didn't flinch. She didn't. "Mason hired an attorney," she told me as soon as I sat down. "Daniel Cho. He's competent." "What is he asking for?" "He wants to renegotiate the apartment. Claims he made the down payment. I paid the rent for nearly 3 years while he saved for a startup that never happened." Rebecca nodded. You documented that? Yes. She wrote something down. That gives us leverage. How long will this take? I asked. If he cooperates, 6 weeks. If he fights everything, longer. Will he fight? Rebecca leaned back slightly. Men in his position usually react one of 2 ways. They either concede quickly because they know they're cornered, or they push back because they can't accept losing control. She looked at me. From what you've described, he doesn't like losing control. She was right. Mason functioned best when he believed he was steering everything. When something shifted beyond him, he scrambled. I left her office with a list of additional documents to gather and a tentative timeline. Instead of going straight home, I walked 3 blocks to a cafe and sat by the window with a coffee I barely tasted. I thought about Mason meeting with his attorney, about him trying to shape a version of the story where he wasn't entirely at fault, about him calling his mother for advice, about Lauren, probably waiting to know what place she had in his future. I didn't feel anger. I felt something closer to release. On Friday morning, my mother came into my room carrying 2 mugs of coffee and sat at the edge of the bed. How did it go with the lawyer? She asked. Clear, I said. We're on track. She hesitated before asking, and Lauren? It was the first time her name had been spoken in the house since the dinner. I don't have anything to say to her right now, I replied. I understand. She took a sip of coffee. I just wonder how you're processing that part. She was your friend. That part was harder to define. Mason betrayed me as a husband. There were words for that. A legal process. Steps to follow. Lauren betrayed me differently. She had sat in my living room while I poured her tea. She had let me plan her baby shower. She had looked at my wedding photo while telling me the father of her child was a good man. There was no paperwork for that. I'm not trying to process it yet, I said. I'm not forcing it. My mother nodded. It doesn't have to be resolved this week. That afternoon, I received a message from Mrs. Hahn. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. It simply said, "What happened was wrong. I won't ask you to understand. I only wanted you to know I see that." I read it twice. I didn't reply, but I didn't delete it either. That evening, I returned to the apartment for the first time. Rebecca had arranged a 2-hour window when Mason would be out. I walked in with my key, went straight to the bedroom, and followed the list I had written 3 days earlier. Clothes, personal documents, the books that were mine before the marriage, 2 framed prints I had bought in my 20s, the espresso maker my grandmother had given me, nothing else. Everything else could be sorted out legally. It took 50 minutes. Before leaving, I stood in the living room. Our wedding photo was still on the mantel, the same one Lauren had glanced at weeks earlier. I didn't take it. Not because it didn't matter, but because it no longer belonged to me. I closed the door and kept the key in my bag for the moment. I wasn't ready to leave it on the counter yet. I found my new apartment the following Tuesday. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, no elevator, 8 blocks from a job I had just started, and 20 minutes by train from my parents. Small, affordable, mine. I signed the lease that week. The job had come first. During those 6 weeks of planning, I had quietly updated my resume, reached out to former contacts, applied to positions Mason didn't know about. I had studied design before marriage. Somewhere along the way, I had shifted into working from home because it was more convenient. Convenient for him. In the interview, they asked why I had stepped away from the field. I'm ready to return, I said. They called me 4 days later. I started on a Monday. The first month was practical chaos. New systems, new clients, new expectations, but it was a kind of difficulty I could manage. It required focus, not emotional endurance. My supervisor, Carla Bennett, was direct and structured. She didn't waste words. I appreciated that. The week I signed the lease, Rebecca called. He's agreed to the main terms, she said. The apartment will be yours. And the joint account? He's already moved money out. Not enough to change the case, but it's documented. Of course he had. How do you feel? She asked. It was the first time she had asked me that. Ready for it to be over, I said. That night, I went shopping for the apartment. I walked through the store slowly, choosing things without imagining anyone else's opinion. Sheets in a color Mason would have called impractical. A small rug. 2 plants I wasn't sure I could keep alive. I sat on the floor that first evening because I didn't have a couch yet, back against the wall. Looking around, it wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. And for the first time in months, the quiet didn't feel like something I had to survive. It felt like space. The couch came 2 weeks later. I didn't pick it alone. I met someone in an online design course I had started during those 6 weeks of quiet planning. Her name was Vanessa Cole, graphic designer, 35. Lived alone since 28 and spoke about it like it was a choice she defended often. We met for coffee first. I told her the short version. Divorce, restart, new apartment. She didn't look at me like I was fragile. She just nodded and said, "Rebuilding is uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's wrong." She came with me to pick the couch. We debated fabrics for almost an hour. I kept catching myself thinking, Mason wouldn't like this color. Then correcting the thought. It didn't matter what Mason liked. I chose a deep navy one, structured but not stiff. We set it up ourselves. It was crooked the first time. We fixed it. Ordered pizza. Sat on it while eating straight from the box. "How does it feel?" Vanessa asked. "Like it's mine," I said. "It is." The divorce paperwork finalized in 5.5 weeks, faster than expected. Rebecca called on a Tuesday afternoon. "He signed everything," she said. "No more delays." "How did he take it?" "Calmer toward the end. I think he understood there wasn't much to argue." I thanked her and hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. It felt like finishing cleaning a room that had been cluttered for years. Not joy, just order. Work started demanding more of me. Carla assigned me my first independent project in May, a mid-sized office renovation downtown. 3-month timeline. 4-person team under my coordination. The first week was intense. I made small mistakes. Carla corrected them without emotion. By week 3, the client approved our initial designs without requesting revisions. One Friday evening, Carla stopped by my desk. The client asked who was managing their project. She said, "Is that bad?" I asked. "No, they said you respond faster than anyone they've worked with." It was a small compliment. It mattered more than I expected. On Fridays, I started having dinner at my parents' house, not because I needed support anymore, because I wanted to. My father always cooked too much food. My mother asked about work with genuine interest. Those nights didn't require analysis or strategy. They were just steady. One evening after dinner, I sat in the corner chair I used to claim as a teenager. I thought about Thanksgiving. The kitchen sink, the running water, Mrs. Han's voice in Korean, Mason saying he had to handle it carefully so I wouldn't walk away with everything. 30 seconds. That conversation lasted maybe 30 seconds. 30 seconds that changed the direction of my life. And all because I understood a language he assumed I didn't. I had learned Korean because my babysitter, Mrs. Kim, believed children should grow up bilingual. She had started teaching me words at 8 years old. By 12, I could hold full conversations. For years, it had just been a skill sitting quietly in the background of my life, until it wasn't. In early spring, something unexpected happened. Vanessa forwarded me a message from a mutual acquaintance. It was a woman asking if I knew Mason had been let go from his company. I didn't respond immediately. Later that night, I looked it up myself. His professional profile had been updated, exploring new opportunities after a transition. I knew what that meant. A major project he had been leading collapsed during rollout. A client terminated the contract. His name was listed as team lead in a short industry article I found. I closed the page. I didn't feel triumph, maybe a flicker of confirmation. Mason had always operated well when things were smooth. When something fell apart under pressure, he looked for ways to shift responsibility. I had been part of that system longer than I realized. Lauren reached out twice in January. I never answered. By March, the messages stopped. Through indirect channels, I heard that Mason hadn't moved in with her. They were still in contact because of the pregnancy, but living separately. She had to leave her old apartment and find something smaller. When my mother told me carefully, watching my reaction, I realized I felt neutral. Not satisfied, not sorry. Just aware. One afternoon in April, I received an email from a name I didn't recognize. Subject line: "You don't know me, but I think we share a past." Her name was Elena Brooks. She said she had dated Mason 2 years before he met me, that it had taken her weeks to decide whether to contact me, that she didn't want anything, no drama, no alliance, just to let me know that what happened with me hadn't started with me. We met for coffee the following week. Elena was direct, calm. She explained her story in 20 minutes. Different details, same structure. Mason managing perceptions carefully. Mason controlling the narrative. Mason exiting when it suited him. "I'm not telling you this so you hate him more," she said. "I just wish someone had told me I wasn't crazy." "I already reached that conclusion," I replied, "but I appreciate it." A week later, Elena told me there had been someone between us too. Another woman named Rachel. The 3 of us met one evening at Elena's apartment. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting. No bitterness spilling over. Just 3 women comparing timelines and filling in gaps. By the end of the night, the pattern was obvious. Rachel said quietly, "What bothers me most isn't that he lied. It's how organized he was about it." "He's less organized now," I said. They looked at me. "He lost his job in February. No one celebrated, but no one pretended the information didn't mean something. In June, Carla called me into her office. "We secured a new client," she said. "A Korean hotel group expanding into the US." She paused. "They want someone who can coordinate directly with their team in Seoul." I blinked. "You put Korean on your resume." I had. Almost as an afterthought. "Would you be willing to travel?" she asked. "Yes," I said, before she finished the question. 2 weeks later, I was on a 14-hour flight with a folder of project materials in my bag and noise-canceling headphones over my ears. When I landed in Seoul, it was early morning. The team there greeted me formally. 4 people, a director, 2 architects, 1 local coordinator. When I greeted them in Korean, the director's expression shifted slightly. "Your Korean is strong," he said. "I grew up in Koreatown," I answered. The meetings were structured, efficient, clear, no hidden meanings, no subtext. I functioned well there. On the second weekend, I walked through a quiet neighborhood with traditional houses and narrow streets, sat on a low wall for a while, checking messages. Vanessa had sent a photo of one of my plants still alive. My mother sent a picture of dinner. There was also a message from Mason. "I know you don't have to respond. I just wanted to say," I deleted it without opening. Not out of anger, out of clarity. There was nothing in that message I needed. I looked around at the rooftops, the steady rhythm of the city moving around me. That Thanksgiving conversation could have broken me. Instead, it redirected me. The language I learned as a child, something that once felt incidental, became the reason I understood the truth before it was handed to me. On my flight home, I opened a notebook and wrote 3 goals for the next project, closed it, put my seat back, and for the first time in a long time, I slept without replaying a single conversation in my head. When I got back from Seoul, the apartment felt different. Not bigger, not newer, just aligned. I unpacked slowly, placed the ceramic cups I bought in Insadong on the kitchen shelf, framed the ink illustration and hung it above my desk, watered the 2 plants that were still alive, which felt like a small personal victory. Jet lag kept me awake the first night. I lay on the Navy couch instead of the bed, scrolling through emails from the Seoul team confirming next steps. There was no message from Mason. That absence felt intentional. In the weeks that followed, work accelerated. The hotel project moved into detailed planning, late calls twice a week with the team in Korea, floor plans, material approvals, budget adjustments. It demanded focus, and I gave it focus. Structure felt good, clear expectations felt good. Vanessa came over one Thursday evening with takeout containers and a bottle of wine. She sat cross-legged on the couch and looked around. "It feels settled now," she said. "It does," I replied. She studied me for a moment. "Are you really okay?" I considered the question carefully. "I'm not broken," I said. "I'm adjusting." That was the most honest version of it. Some nights were still quiet in a way that pressed against my chest. Not painful, just noticeable. I missed the idea of partnership sometimes, the routine of shared meals, the sound of another person moving around in the morning, but I didn't miss Mason. That difference mattered. In July, I ran into Lauren for the first time since the restaurant. It happened in a grocery store. I saw her before she saw me. She looked tired, heavily pregnant now, standing in front of the cereal aisle like she had forgotten why she was there. For a second, I considered turning around. Then she looked up and saw me. Her body stiffened. We stood there in the fluorescent light, 2 women who used to know everything about each other. "Hi," she said. "Hi." There was a pause that felt longer than it probably was. "How are you?" she asked. "Busy," I said. "You?" She nodded. "Tired." I didn't ask about Mason. She didn't volunteer anything. "I'm sorry," she said finally. Her voice was quieter than I'd ever heard it. I studied her face. I believed she was sorry, but sorry didn't rebuild trust. "I hope everything goes smoothly," I said, meaning the pregnancy. She nodded again. We didn't hug. We didn't promise to talk. We walked in opposite directions. When I got to my car, I sat behind the steering wheel for a minute before starting the engine. That encounter didn't reopen anything. It confirmed something. The version of us that existed before Thanksgiving was gone, and neither of us could pretend otherwise. In August, Rebecca emailed to confirm the final financial transfers had cleared. Everything was officially separated. No shared accounts, no shared property, no shared obligations. A clean break, on paper. Around the same time, I received a short message from Mrs. Han again. "My son is struggling," it read. "I am not asking for forgiveness. I only hope you are well." I read it twice. Then I replied for the first time. "I am well. I hope you are too." Nothing more. It wasn't reconciliation. It was closure. Work continued to grow. Carla called me into her office late one afternoon. "The Soul team requested you specifically for the next phase," she said. "They trust you." I felt something settle in my chest. Trust. A word that had felt complicated months ago now felt professional. Earned. Defined. "I'll take it," I said. That fall, my project was featured in a small industry newsletter. Nothing dramatic. A photo of the redesigned office space. A short paragraph mentioning coordination between international teams. My name was printed correctly. My parents clipped it out and put it on their refrigerator. Vanessa sent me a screenshot with 3 exclamation points. I didn't send it to Mason. That thought didn't even cross my mind until later, when I realized it hadn't. One evening in October, I sat on the Navy couch with a cup of tea and thought about the woman I had been at the sink on Thanksgiving, hands shaking, face calm, listening. She could have confronted him immediately. She could have screamed. She could have packed a bag and left without a plan. Instead, she stayed still long enough to build one. I didn't admire that version of myself, but I respected her because she chose clarity over chaos. In November, almost exactly a year after Thanksgiving, I received a birth announcement through mutual contacts. Lauren had a baby boy. I stared at the message for a long moment, then I put my phone down. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel grief. I felt distance. That chapter had closed. Not erased. Closed. On Thanksgiving that year, I hosted dinner at my apartment. Small. Just my parents. Vanessa came too. I cooked dishes that blended everything I was. Traditional American sides. One Korean dish Mrs. Kim had taught me years ago. Made the way she showed me. At some point during dessert, my father looked around the apartment and said, "You built this." He didn't mean the furniture. He meant the life. I nodded. After everyone left and the dishes were stacked in the sink, I stood in my quiet kitchen, the same kind of kitchen where everything had shifted a year before. I turned on the faucet and let the water run over my hands. This time, they weren't shaking. I understood every language spoken in that room, and more importantly, I understood myself.